Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking about the Bears debacle in New York. We're going to be talking about the helter-skelter Chicago Bulls, the bombing Blackhawks, and a little bit of Cubs and White Sox news. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The season is going on right now, so head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. They make wonderful Christmas gifts, if that's your thing. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Oh boy, Alex. Oh boy. Oh boy. Today was a day for Bears game.
Yeah, it wasn't particularly enjoyable. Can't say that it was.
No, I mean, the Bears were saying the right things. Justin is day to day. We're going to see how it goes. There's a possibility he could start. There's a possibility he could play. There's a possibility he could be shut down for the season. Well, I think it was pretty clear to everybody on earth that Justin Fields was not going to play today.
Yeah, and you know what? It's fine because these games don't mean anything. He was clearly in some pain, as he said, and the Jets have a really good defense. They got a really good front seven. And I really did not want to see an injured Justin Fields going out there, especially when you watched today. You saw how poor those conditions were. I was so glad he was not playing in that game. And it wasn't a fun game at all. But honestly, I feel absolutely no emotion from that game. I'm not bummed. I'm not angry. I'm not mad. I wasn't even that disgusted because I'm like, you know what? This is what this team is. And I'd be much more disgusted if this was our team and we didn't have our future quarterback that hasn't shown us any promise. If this was just like, well, like even last year, even though you did have Justin Fields, you weren't sure how the system was going to work. You were still in the Matt Nagy era and everything was ugly. You didn't know what your direction was. At least we know what the long-term goal this was. When you have a backup quarterback in there, you don't expect much. And the Bears, really the worst thing about today was dropping like flies injury-wise. But you went into this game already injured. You didn't have Justin Fields. You didn't have Jaquan Brisker. You didn't have Melvin Gordon. It's like, well, now you have
Kyler Gordon.
Did I say Melvin Gordon?
You said Melvin Gordon.
Jeez. Kyler Gordon.
It's all right. The turkey was setting in.
Yeah. It's like Trevor Siemian. I'll always say Trevor Siemian, but every now and then I'll say like Marcus Siemian or something like that. But yeah, Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker, Justin Fields, all those guys were not playing. And then you have Eddie Jackson and Darnell Mooney go down in the game. And Chase Claypool even looked a bit shaken up. Really
Riley Reif went out as well.
And that's true. I forgot about him. And that was the thing. That was really the only like negative I could take away from this game. I mean, obviously you don't want to lose, but losing at this point, it's getting us a better draft position week by week. But, you take that. It's like, whatever. You lose with a backup quarterback. You're trying to tank. Who cares? All I could really take away from this game was we had some bad injuries. That kind of sucks. Everything else is whatever. It's just whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so we were certain yesterday when they brought Nathan Peterman up from the practice squad to the active roster that Justin Fields was not going to play. I mean,
Yeah.
we all knew pretty much, but it was confirmed, all but confirmed when they brought him up that it was going to be Semien. And then Semien got injured in warmups, almost didn't play. It was actually reported by several people that Nathan Peterman was going to get the start.
There was like a 40-minute period where we thought Nathan Peterman was going to be the starting quarterback.
And
could you imagine?
I mean, would it have been much worse? Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe a little. I mean, it was bad either way. I mean, it was an ugly game today. It would have been probably slightly uglier if Peterman was in there. It's just, yeah. I mean, it didn't matter. At the end of the day, it simply didn't matter. Your defense got bowled over. The offense couldn't do anything outside the first quarter. There was nothing redeeming about this game, really, outside of Chase Claypool making a few plays, making a few catches, nice catch down the line early in the game, and then Byron Pringle making a nice catch, and Jack Sanborn continuing to play well. He's been a really nice story. Those are really the only positives, anything of note that you could take away from that game outside of your draft position with that loss.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the first half, it was a close game. The Jets defense kept the Bears in check, but the Bears were able to keep the Jets in check, sort of.
Outside of the first drive, that was a slice.
Yeah. So you're like, okay, all right, I like this. And honestly, I guess I root for at this point close losses. Like, I think that's the best we could is moral victories.
Right.
Because this game, you do not put in the moral victory campaign. Like
no.
the Dolphins game, you lost that on the score sheet, but you call that a moral victory because that's one of the better teams, and you should have won if the refs didn't blow it. Some of the other games are like, okay, moral victory. This was not a victory on the field, nor was it a moral victory. It was a disaster. And the funny part is I don't know if you were on Twitter during the game. I was at a birthday party during the very beginning, and on the drive home I was listening, but I checked it on Twitter, and so many quote unquote Bears fans were like, Semien is a better quarterback than Justin Fields. We should be starting him for the rest of the year going forward. And like, what a terrible conclusion to jump to after one drive.
Yeah, I was all over Twitter watching it, and the way I took away from it was half of those tweets were sarcasm, half of those tweets were legit, and you even saw beat writers. You saw people like Joe Cowley already tweeting about the passing yards.
Yeah, but Joe Cowley is just a troll. That's like his whole goal.
Well,
like
yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you have people trying to rile others up when you have other people also trying to seriously look at the passing yards. And it's like, okay, the first quarter, you had two nice drives, one that stalled on really what should have been DPI on Chase Claypool, shocker, in the end zone, but you could have scored 2 touchdowns on the first 2 drives. You had some checkdowns. You had the throw downfield to Chase Claypool, which was a very nice catch. It would have been pass interference either way. The flag was thrown, but you had some checkdowns that they were able to get some yards after the play. So, okay, you have a few nice drives. Everything after those first 2 drives, you really didn't do anything. Honestly, you really did not do anything.
No, not at all. If anything, this just cements how good Justin Fields is, because to be honest with you, is our big worry was that defensive front. And you had Robert Saleh talking about during the week that if Justin Fields plays, we're going to hit him. And if Justin Fields doesn't play, whoever does play, we're going to hit him.
Right.
And to be honest, that defensive front, they got their shots, but they it wasn't a bloodbath like I thought it was. The Bears'
No, it
offensive
wasn't.
line actually played fairly well.
Especially early on.
Yeah, I mean, I as much as I like Larry Borum, Riley Reef, they're better when Riley Reef is in there playing.
When Riley Reef and Tevin Jenkins are healthy, it makes a significant difference.
Yes, Tevin Jenkins makes that line better because I still believe he is currently their best offensive lineman.
I agree.
And they actually played fairly well. They were able to legitimately run the ball, not Justin Fields running the ball and adding 200 yards to your rushing totals. But they legitimately were running the ball well. I think David Montgomery was rushing for close to 6 yards a pop in that game.
5.6.
Okay. Yeah, it's over 5 is good. Over 5 is good. And so you saw those good things. And, Semien, and what's funny is they installed an offense geared around Trevor Semien because he is not a mobile quarterback.
No.
And they geared the offense around him, which, okay, that's what you're supposed to do. But my frustration is some of these plays, why aren't they installing that for Justin Fields? Because you know what? Regardless of anybody's opinion, Justin Fields is a far superior passing quarterback to Semien.
Yes.
Even if he was playing hobbled and, couldn't use his legs, he is a far superior. He's just has less experience in the NFL. But you look at their body of work over their football careers, and not just the NFL, but the NCAA, high school. Justin Fields is a fantastic quarterback, and he's going to find that groove, and you're going to be like, wow, look at those throws he has. Trevor Semien is not that guy. He's a journeyman. And so why aren't you installing some of those pass type plays and check down things for Justin Fields to allow him not just to run the ball, but to build that confidence? Because we've talked about it before, but Justin Fields is a better quarterback when his confidence is high, and they've found that confidence boost by his legs. Why not then add to it checkdowns? Doesn't that make him more dangerous? Is if he has a nice check down and add some multiple screen fronts, and then build in the mid-range passing game, because then suddenly you look a lot better. Darnell Mooney going out with an ankle, that really sucks.
Yeah.
But do you know what is if Justin Fields comes back, the only benefit is it takes away the safety cushion of going to Darnell Mooney, forces you to go to Chase Claypool more, who is going to be here for a longer time. You build that rapport up with him. It kind of takes away, I don't want to say the crutch, but it takes away a guy that you're more comfortable with, and forces you to become more comfortable with the new guy.
It was a little bit frustrating early on to see them move the ball and see some of those guys get schemed open. Even when they weren't downfield, even when they were checkdowns, they were wide open. They were able to, get the easy pass and get a lot of yards after it. I'm like, man, why are we doing this with Fields? I'm so glad you brought that stuff up. And I hope that maybe that's a lesson to Luke Getsy. Be like, hey, let's do some of this stuff with our QB1 as well, because I think that would make an absolute huge difference in how they do things. And you know what? What you saw early on too, it looked like everything was in sync. You're using a backup quarterback, but they were in sync with that game plan early on. They were moving it quickly downfield. Just imagine what you could do with your QB1. Because, okay, like going back to what you said about comparing Trevor Semien and Justin Fields, if you look at what Trevor Semien did today, that is just pure backup numbers. He finished with 179 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. There is no reason, none whatsoever, that we should be comparing that to Justin Fields and asking questions.
where you should be if you want to compare. Don't look at the stat line and be like, well, Justin Fields only threw for 179. Is look at what the team scored in the games with Justin Fields.
30 points versus 10 points.
Yes, he's triple the points. So regardless of how many passing yards, that's the Justin Fields effect. He makes your offense better. Even with him, mostly using his legs, is if you can incorporate some of the passing plays that you put in for Trevor Siemian, put those in for Justin Fields. And then watch how much you're going to score. You might win some ball games in there. I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing at this point, but it allows you to score points. And honestly, I'm going to tell you something today is you can look at Chase Claypool's numbers and be like, meh. But you know what I saw? I saw him cooking Sauce Gardner. And Sauce Gardner was he like the 6th overall pick or 4th overall? He's
really dang good.
He was a really high draft pick this year. And I have watched a lot of Jets games this year. He is really good. He is going to be one of the next elite cornerbacks. And I watched Chase Claypool cook him. So, you can't tell me just because he doesn't have those numbers doesn't mean that wasn't a wise investment. I totally feel good about that, trading that 2nd round pick for Chase Claypool. And it's going to end up being much higher than I expected it to be. But regardless, I still think it was a good pick because whoever you draft is probably not going to be as good as Chase Claypool is right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Chase Claypool is still young. He can still be a huge part of your core. He is not making that much money. You can sign him to an extension where you're like, all right, we are locked with him. And
he just joined the system. It might take a little time to adjust. I mean, I don't think we should be throwing Chase Claypool out of the mix yet. I mean, I just think it's way too early for that.
No. And, everybody's like, we could have had George Pickens. George Pickens. You know what? George Pickens, he might be awesome, but he has not shown us anything that he is elite and worth bitching and moaning about.
Yeah, I don't even think about that. I really try not to think about that.
I try not to, but sometimes it's so irksome that like, what has George Pickens done where you're like, oh, that guy? I mean, if it would have been, Jamar Chase would have fallen that far, and you look at what he does. Yeah. Oh man. Even what's his name? Garrett Wilson from the Jets. You're like, oh man, that guy's real good. That's a guy you're like, okay, maybe we kind of, but George Pickens has not shown us that. He's shown us some flashes, but has not shown us that. And not a large enough body of work to be bitching and moaning about that we failed because we didn't get George Pickens. Because guess what? Is George Pickens will not be in the Super Bowl this year. He did not carry his team to the Super Bowl. So shut up. Everybody shut up about George Pickens.
Everybody shut up. Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think that you talked about it last week, how one thing we would like to see in this game, because even last week, the Justin Fields injury happened during the game, obviously at the very end. So we were already talking about the possibility of Justin Fields not playing this week. So I think you and I were discussing what we would actually see from this game. And you had mentioned Chase Claypool and getting some of the receivers schemed open, playing with Trevor Siemian. And, we did see that. It's just, after a while, the Jets clamped down and Trevor Siemian played like a backup quarterback, so I think that what Chase Claypool did today, even though he only recorded 2 catches on 5 targets, one should have been DPI. It flat out should have, and then I think another one was just a high pass, but I think we could take something away from that and look at it as a positive. So keep building on that. I think that's important. And who knows what this Darnell Mooney injury is going to look like. So if Darnell Mooney's going to be gone, then he's going to be your number one, basically.
Yeah. So I just, everybody just needs to shut up and calm down a little bit. I think this is going to work out. And honestly, you didn't have a lot of choices anyway. Are you going to count on a guy being in the draft to carry you, or you make the trade and know he's on your roster, knowing especially what the free agent market looks like? And honestly, here's a fact of life: is quarterback is still the number one position. Wide receiver has become the number two most important position. And we saw the importance of that position based on the way guys got paid this offseason and what teams gave up to get receivers this offseason. So we got a guy who's not making a ton of money. We gave up a second round pick. I've seen guys that were, on par talent wise, go for first round picks. And there's not a lot of guys on the market. And if there were an elite guy, we would be paying through the nose, and they might not even make it. They might get franchise tag. And second tier guys, you look at Jacksonville. Who was the guy they overpaid and gave way too much money for? Or the Lions gave $12 million to DJ Chark. Like, that's what we would be living with, is overpaying for a guy like that. Not worth it when we could have a better guy in with a second round pick.
Go sign Odell Beckham Jr.
You mean the guy who literally just got escorted off an airplane?
Yeah. Woof.
Yeah. Let's see, what else did I have? We didn't have Brisker, Gordon, Justin Fields. We lost Riley Reef to a shoulder injury. Eddie Jackson got a foot injury, which didn't look good.
No, and that was non-contact too.
Yep. I honestly thought it was an Achilles. I saw it and I was like, that's an Achilles. And he's done for a long time. They're saying it's a foot, which is much better than an Achilles, but that field was really just taking dudes out.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how bad Soldier Field is, but I feel like MetLife is also among the worst stadiums, at least turf-wise, in the NFL. It seems like MetLife is always kind of a mess.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, Soldier Field is bad because it looks ugly. It's tough to play in. You lose your footing. You don't see a lot of guys get injured because of it. It's just bad footing stuff.
Right, slipping and sliding and...
Yes. And that's, I was tweeting with somebody who was like, I don't know. Number one, we as Bears fans recognize bad fields because we're used to a bad field. But I would much rather play on a bad sloppy field than one that where the NFL should be investigating because so many injuries occur.
Right. I mean, they were dropping like flies today, and I'm like, can we just take a knee and get this over with?
Oh, I know. Like, literally when they scored that first touchdown, the Jets scored that first touchdown in the third quarter, I was like, tap. Let's just call this a forfeit and walk away.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, when they didn't score, when the Bears got the ball back to start the half, when they didn't score or look like anything close to scoring on that drive, I would have said, yeah, enough. I'm done.
Defense wise, it was it was tough. I mean, we were without a starting cornerback. We ended up playing with an emergency safety. And because we were without Brisker for the whole game, and Eddie Jackson went out I don't know, middle of the game.
Yeah, around there.
And we already didn't have Dane Cruikshank because he had a hammy. So it was Elijah Hicks, who I was very high on coming out of college. He didn't have a good game today. I hope that is just a first time playing thing where it only goes up from there rather than a sign of things to come. And DeAndre Houston Carson, who I love DHC, but he is really a special teamer. So that was tough, and just don't get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And they were able to just pick us apart with shorts underneath stuff and guys beating coverage and being out of position. It was awful. I know you mentioned Jack Sanborn, and Jack Sanborn is playing pretty well. Like, those tackle numbers are through the roof. Against the run, he's pretty damn solid. My problem with Jack Sanborn is he's a liability in the passing game.
Yeah, I mean, on the run, he's been absolutely excellent.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he's been, from the games that Roquan Smith played and the games that Jack Sanborn played, Jack Sanborn has played better against the run than Roquan Smith.
He has. I mean, it's been kind of night and day if you compare those two. And I think Jack Sanborn, I mean, is he an overall replacement to Roquan Smith talent-wise? I don't think so. But I think that you definitely say we have a piece in him, whether or not he's a starter or whatever. I think you can safely say at this point, you have something in him to be part of the team in the future. It'll be interesting to see how he plays the rest of the year. Is he able to keep it up? Is he able to improve? Will there be any, coming down to earth a bit? Because, I mean, just the way he plays, like, he plays really solid on the run game, and he's everywhere on the run game. He's making tackles left and right, and he's making good tackles. He's not letting guys slip through. He is reading it. He's getting there. He's not letting them get any extra yards. That's all huge. So let's see how he does the rest of the year. It's been kind of fun to watch him. He's one of the few defenders that's been fun to watch, honestly, outside of like Brisker and Jackson. So see what you got in him the rest of the year. But I think he's definitely earned he's earned that right to be called a guy.
Yeah, I mean, when I watch every week, I add quote unquote data to, if Sean was GM, what would be the game plan? And, it evolves every week. You use what you've seen previously, and then take into account what you're seeing every week. And, I would always have my eye open to upgrade over Jack Sanborn, but he has become a lower and lower priority to look to upgrade over. You start ranking what are our biggest needs, and excuse me, old man sneeze. Obviously, I mean, I think your defensive front becomes priority number one. You can't, play this style of defense without getting pressure from your front four, and you're not getting that.
Hey, we actually recorded a sack today.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was luck. We added Taco Charlton off of somebody's practice squad, and big deal. He's never lived up to the billing he came out of Michigan with. But we just don't get enough. I would say offensive line would be your number 2 priority, wide receiver 3, cornerback 4, your overall linebackers 5. But then you start looking at the individual players within those units, and like, I think Sanborn and Morrow are okay, and you can live with them and be I think you could have a solid defense with those guys on it. But if somebody falls into your lap that could replace one of those two guys, you go for it, I think. But that said, Sanborn has been an absolute steal as a undrafted free agent. And no matter what, he's part of your team the guy's attitude, the guy's willingness to go play. He's a football player. He's a high football IQ guy. He makes up for, his lack of foot speed and some of the athletic measurables with just football smarts. And that's a guy you keep on your team, even if you replace him as a starter, as a competent backup and a great special teamer. That's a guy you keep on your team. He's a guy that you want that his type of leadership in your and work ethic in your clubhouse, in your locker room.
Yeah, agreed.
But the rest of the defense is a mess. Guys are out of position.
Yeah.
You don't get the pressure. And it's just so bad to watch, and it's just gone downhill. Early on, you were like, okay, they didn't play so good in the first half, and you watch them make adjustments, and now it's just they're going to make everybody look like Tom Brady from 5 years ago.
Mike White was slinging it today against that Bears defense.
Yeah, Mike White throwing for what, 315?
Yeah, over 300 yards, 3 touchdown passes, no interceptions.
And a quarterback rating of 149.3.
Yeah, and I mean, outside like this sack, you didn't get pressure on him. You didn't come close to turning the ball over. I mean, you just got cooked really badly.
And it's funny, you look at other teams, you're like, oh, why do the quarterbacks play so bad against these other teams and they play so great against us? It's pressure. Like, some guys can deal with the pressure. You look like a Pat Mahomes. Like, a lot of times pressure doesn't get to him. We've seen it with the Super Bowl, the last Super Bowl they were in. They got the pressure just ate him alive. But that was unreal pressure. But most of the time, just getting any sort of pressure and move that guy out of his comfort zone. Like, you look at Jared Goff. That guy is 2 different quarterbacks. When he's under pressure and when he's not. When doesn't have pressure, he is absolutely a beast. And you're like, man, this guy, maybe the Lions do have their quarterback of the future right there. But then you watch him with any sort of pressure and he just turns into a complete flop sweat. Same thing with Kirk Cousins. You get pressure and that guy just folds like, house of cards. Like, it's unreal. And, and that's just having some bit of pressure, constant pressure on guys. And the Bears need that desperately.
And we knew that this was going to be an issue going into this year. Even when you still had Roquan Smith and when you still had Robert Quinn, you knew that this defense wasn't going to get nearly as much pressure on the quarterback as it had been years prior. You didn't have Khalil Mack anymore. You didn't have Akeem Hicks anymore. A guy like Gibson is a solid player, but that doesn't make up for losing several elite pass rushers like Khalil Mack. And now that Roquan and Robert Quinn especially are gone, you're getting so little. I mean, when your safety is your sacks leader, what is it? What does that tell you?
It's not good. So that's the frustrating part. And honestly, it's I was hoping that when the Bears drafted that they would be able to draft weapons and prioritize weapons. And honestly, the more and more I look, it's so hard to pass on some of the elite defenders that are coming out of the draft, and that you're just like, man, I don't know how you do it. Like, I don't know how you pass on these defenders knowing that the Bears pass rush is so bad. That
If you want to, the Bears got to compete next year. The goal next year should be competing. And if you want to compete next year, you have to have pressure on the opposing quarterback. There's just, if you don't have it, you're not going to win as many games as you should. Those close games can be made or broken by getting pressure on the opposing quarterback.
I mean, honestly, you at that where the Bears are drafting, they could get Will Anderson, that edge rusher from Alabama. They could get Jalen Carter, that defensive lineman from Georgia, who could be the next elite defensive tackle. Like, those are guys that are going to be there when you draft. And as awesome as it would be to get one of these elite wide receivers like Jordan Addison or Quentin Johnson, I don't know how you pass up on those guys. You can shore up. I don't see the Bears drafting an offensive lineman that early. I would be just completely and utterly shocked. I think they fix that either with mid-round draft picks and free agency money. But it's such a toss-up. What do you do? And the hope would be if you could trade back not too far and a team like maybe like a Seattle, if you could get their both of their first rounders for your first rounder, and you could still get one of those top wide receivers, but one of those elite defensive players at the same time, I think that suddenly elevates your draft status incredibly.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a little bit of breaking news here.
Uh-oh.
Darnell Mooney likely needs season-ending surgery to repair torn ligaments. Sources say a tough end of the season for the promising receiver, as reported by Ian Rappaport.
Not good. Not good. I was hoping it would just be like a high ankle sprain and miss a couple weeks, but that's a tough break for him and the Bears.
Yeah, it is.
It's time for Byron Pringle and Chase Claypool to step up and put on their big boy pants.
See if you got anything in Velus Jones Jr. See if you got anything in N'Keal Harry, I guess.
Yep. Yep.
Seen enough of Equanimous St. Brown.
And Dante Pettis.
Yeah. I mean, at least St. Brown can block well, but that's about it.
But I think the last thing I want to talk about is the draft status. You look, and currently the Bears have the number 2 overall draft pick, but it's a little bit of a mirage, because if you look at it, the reason that they're number 2 is because they have not had their bye week yet. So they have more losses than other teams. But when all the teams that currently have 3 losses, or 3 wins. So the Bears, the Rams, the Broncos, the Steelers, the way they rank those when you have the same win-loss record for the draft is the team with the lowest strength of schedule, so the easiest schedule, gets the priority, and the team with the strongest strength of schedule gets the lowest priority. And right now, the Bears have the toughest schedule in the entire NFL.
Odds for a high pick are looking good.
No, so that's bad because then you get so if the Bears are tied for the second pick with the Rams, the Broncos, the Steelers, the
Well, I
the
know
Ra-
you mean. I mean, still. I mean,
oh yeah. I mean,
we're
it's
not gonna.
good.
Are we gonna win another game? I know what you're saying with the
Oh, yeah.
tiebreaker stuff, but
Yeah, it's good because the Bears are really unlikely to win another game,
right.
but it's bad because so many teams are bunched up.
Well,
If they end
yes,
up
it
being
is.
like, I mean, before today's game, because you had a couple of teams pull out wins in Carolina and um, Arizona and Las Vegas, but I mean, the Bears could have easily gone from second to like 12th just by their bad or their tough strength of schedule.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a, hey, we'll know more once the Bears have their bye week in 2 weeks of what their draft status is going to look like. But I mean, the hope is that they can just keep losing and we can get this high draft pick and hopefully trade back. I think every Bears fan is on board with trade back and let a quarterback desperate team give you a lot of picks.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, this is why I'm looking at it in a good way. I feel like I look at the remaining schedule. The most winnable game is Detroit, maybe. And I think they're going to beat you again. That team can score. Against this defense, I think we're losing to Detroit most likely, but it's probably your most likely win. Unless the Vikings, the final week that we play them, they just rest everybody and don't even try. I mean, that would be the other one.
If they shut Justin Fields down for the season, we're not winning another game. We are just losing.
Right. I mean, I don't want to shut Justin Fields down yet. If that is the scenario, then yeah, they're not winning another game. And that's fine. And if they do start Justin Fields, I feel like maybe you squeak one out somewhere, but that's about it. I don't think you're going to finish this season with more than 4 wins. 4 would be the absolute most, which would mean that you would win one more game because you have 3 wins currently.
Yeah, and I think the Rams will pull one out at some point because that defense is still pretty darn good. And once Stafford comes back, I think they'll win another 1 or 2 games.
I'm praying they do.
Who knows what Denver's going to do? I think Pittsburgh probably wins on Monday night or tomorrow night.
It could. They could. Yeah, I mean, they could. I mean, that's crap versus crap right there.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if the Bears lose to Detroit, then Detroit, drops down in picks. But Detroit gets the Rams first round pick. So it's the Detroit's you're gonna have 2 good picks here. Sucks.
I'm a little nervous about Detroit. Look what they can do with freaking Jared Goff.
But Jared Goff he was the number 1 overall pick. He's not a pile of garbage.
He's not a pile of garbage, but man, the way they put up points.
But it's going to come down to, honestly, is, if whoever they draft at quarterback, I'm sure they're going to draft a quarterback with their first pick, with the one they get from the Rams. Does that guy become a guy? Then if so, this is going to be crazy because it's going to be Bears and Lions as the probably the 2 teams dominating this division, and Green Bay and Minnesota falling behind. But if the quarterback they draft doesn't turn out to be the guy, then that sets them back a lot.
Right, exactly. I mean, they have to make the right moves. They have to do the right things. Obviously, I think that Detroit isn't the pushover they once were, and I actually see a path for them being good.
Yeah, I mean, it's the NFL makes it so much easier to go from worst to first. And the Bears are benefiting because they're going to get a worse place schedule next year, and they're going to be much better as a team, and so they're going to have that road to the path to victory. But the Lions have been competing and getting better, and they're a well-coached team. And, I don't know what their cap space looks like, but if they can add some smart draft picks and some smart free agents, this could be a good team next year.
Yeah, and we'll see how Dan Campbell coaches, in the big spots. I do give him some credit for what he's doing. I also felt like he kind of botched it on Thanksgiving. If you were watching that game, it felt like to me they were too much playing for the field goal. Now that pass from Goff, I don't remember who the receiver was, but it wasn't a good throw. That was the game right there. But it did feel like they were playing a tad too conservative there. But still, I mean, they almost beat the Bills. And the Bills are supposed to be going to the Super Bowl. Now, the Bills have had some chinks in the armor, but still, I mean, I thought going to that game, I thought the Bills were going to blow the Lions out, and they didn't.
No, but you know who they are going to blow out?
Us.
The Bears.
Yeah. There is no question about that. Unless, everybody on that team gets like sick or something, they get like food poisoning from some bad hotel sausage. And yeah, that's the only way I could see it. That or the weather gets to them for some reason. I don't know. No, I'm not going to do the bear weather thing. I promise. I'm just rambling. So yeah, I mean, again, I look at that strength of schedule you talked about earlier, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, use that to your advantage and keep losing. I don't know. We don't know what the timetable for Justin Fields is. My personal opinion is don't even entertain bringing him back until after the bye week.
Oh yeah, I don't care what. I can live with another loss to the Packers. I just don't want to.
So what is Aaron Rodgers going to prance around bragging he owns Trevor Siemian? Like, really, who cares?
Yeah, nobody cares, especially when I don't know what the score is tonight, but they're probably going to lose to the Eagles.
It was 13-0 Eagles, but the Packers just scored and got a big stop, and they're driving again. So it's a long way to go, though.
If they lose this with their 4-9, they can own the Bears all they want while they're not making the playoffs.
They'd be 4-8 if they lose tonight.
Oh, 4-8. Okay.
Yeah.
And the Bears currently their current number of picks, they've got their first, the Ravens second, their third, their fourth, the Eagles fourth, their fifth, the Ravens fifth, and their seventh. So you're looking at 2, 4, 6, 7 picks, and 2, 4, 6 in the first 5 rounds. That's a nice stockpile, and I'm sure there's going to be some trades to build up your draft capital.
Yeah. I would really love to see that draft capital keep growing.
Oh, I know. If they could end up where, I love what I don't like the picks that Bill Belichick makes. To be honest, I think he's suspect as a draft evaluator and guy that makes the draft picks. But him as a trade, that guy builds up so many draft picks that allows him to do whatever he wants. If he wants to move up, he packages some picks, knowing full well he's got a lot of picks. And if And then when there's not a player that he's in love with, or the guy he's in love with, he feels he could get a little later, he just moves back, collects picks, not just for that year, but for the coming year. So then he can do it again. And I love that. Love it, because that gives you so much flexibility. Last year, the Bears just didn't have the flexibility. You couldn't move up. And under the whole time under Ryan Pace, you did make trades, but you were mortgaging the future. When you build up 12 picks or whatever, you can make those moves, because you can't even keep all those players that you drafted. Even if they turned out to be all good, you can't keep all those because of the roster size. So it allows you that flexibility, the capability to trade around and move up, package some picks, move up, get some picks back, move back. And it's like playing chess, and you have that flexibility. And I would love to get to that point.
Absolutely. I mean, having those assets just to be able to spend at will is so important, because the more you have, like you said, the more flexibility you have, because there are some situations where you're like, you know what, in this position, we don't feel the value is here. And if you can move back and get the value you think you're going to get down the road, you also get more on top of that. So if they can trade back, especially in this first round, that would just be so big, because you're trading back in the first round. That means you're getting, more picks on top of that, but higher picks. We're not talking third, fourth, fifth round per se in that year. We're talking first and second. So if you got like, you traded back, you got their first round pick and another high second pick, I mean, that's still, you still could get so much talent there. You get talent throughout the whole draft, but if you get a high second pick, even there's a lot of elite talent still there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, we got two guys that we are looking at as big part of our future in the second round of the past draft.
Yeah.
All right. Where do you want to move on to?
Well, got to tell you, the Bulls really frustrate me, because we watched them win two really big games. That win in Milwaukee was freaking awesome. A team that had your number through the past 2 years because they were clearly better than you. It's a division rival. You go into their building and you beat them. Vucevic comes up with a big three. You're thinking, all right, this feels great. And this was coming after you beat up on the Celtics again. You've beaten the Celtics twice.
The Celtics were on what, like a 6-game winning streak or something?
Yeah, they were riding high and they were able to beat them pretty good. Then you beat Milwaukee. You're like, okay, maybe that really bad loss to the Orlando Magic was kind of that wake-up call that you needed. You don't like to have to be in that situation, but if that's what gets you going, then okay. And then you lose a really frustrating game to OKC. I mean, that was a really frustrating game.
I was so frustrated at that game. This team really struggles in games that are close at the end of the game. Is in games that are within 5 points with under 5 minutes left in the game, they're 1-8 this season. And you had some sloppy play. You had a terrible foul by DeMar DeRozan at the end of the game. The second unit played like dog doo-doo. You had terrible shooting in the third quarter, and just overall sloppy play. It was a disaster. The reasons that you won in Boston or against Boston and against Milwaukee is you played some good defense, you got some good stops, you made the rebounds, you were hitting your shots at least at a little tough shooting against Boston, but they were getting some rebounds. None of that worked. And you lose in overtime to the Thunder. And it became the DeMar DeRozan show in the overtime. I think he was the only one to score in overtime for the Bulls.
Yeah, I mean, Vucevic had 2 open threes and he couldn't bury those. And when you have a game in which DeMar DeRozan isn't at his best, he's still scoring 20 points and helped get you there. It's just, if it's once again, if you're not relying basically on DeMar DeRozan, then no one else stepping up, it's not a recipe to win.
No, it's not. And I wonder, I'm just going to wonder this out loud, and I know probably people yell at me, but do you sell high on DeMar DeRozan and trade him?
I wouldn't rule it out. You see how the next few months go, but if you're not in a position to make the playoffs, or if you're just a teetering mediocre team, what's that going to get you?
You're not, if you're not competing for a title, you're failing. And the goal is to win a title, not to make the playoffs, not to be a bottom team in the playoffs. So if you're not winning with the group you have, and you don't have a lot of flexibility to go out and get better, you've got to make some drastic moves. And this is one of those ones that might hurt in the short term, but maybe sets you up for a better position in the long term.
Yeah, exactly.
The Patrick Williams against Boston, you're like, okay, I like the way he played. You got 17 points out of him, 3 for 4 from behind the arc. Vucevic with double-digit rebounds. You're like, okay, that's what I want to see. And Patrick Williams hasn't been playing bad, but I really want that guy to just step up and take a big boy seat at the table. And don't play, soft. Go out there and be aggressive. Go out there and try to score. Take over a game. I want to see him. I want to see him do something really good on the regular and be a regular contributor.
Yeah.
Where you know what, if Zach has to sit out a couple days for his knee, that it's not that big of a deal because P. Will step up. That's what I want. And every so often we get a glimpse of who he could be, and it's frustrating because you're like, how do we get this out of this guy? You don't want to let him go because you see what he could be. You see the reason that he was drafted so high, and he's still so young, but you also don't want to pay him if this is all you're going to get from him.
Right. I agree.
It's such a frustrating team that they don't know exactly who they are, and this team just overall doesn't have a strong identity because every night they're a different team. Could be a team where they're hot behind the arc, and DeMar's going to be DeMar, and is Zach going to be Zach that night, or is he going to be the more laid back Robin that night? What Patrick P. Will are you going to get? Which of the second units are you going to get? Are you going to get the one that plays tough defense and keeps that score close, or gives them an energetic boost, or is it going to be the one that just doesn't show up and you have to put in your first unit back early because they're playing it bad? Is it a team that can't rebound at all? Is it going to be the team that shows up and plays tough, or is it the team that just comes out there and just plays so lackadaisically? You don't know. You don't know. There's no consistency in the team that you get every night. And that's probably why they get some of these surprise wins, because Milwaukee probably comes in expecting to get a letdown Bulls after they had a big game against Boston. And they didn't. They came out tough. But the Thunder did. Thunder got the lackadaisical, sloppy play team. And I don't know how you break that. It's kind of the frustration the past few weeks I had a few years ago when the Bulls were consistently playing to their competition. I remember towards the end of the D Rose era, 2015 in particular, how many times they would compete and beat the good teams as they were one of the higher seeds in the East. But the number of times they've lost to just bad, awful teams, that's kind of what it's felt like the past few weeks.
I mean, you've lost the Orlando Magic at home. You lost to OKC the other night, and yet you beat Milwaukee and the Celtics. It's that lack of consistency. But unlike 2015, when the team was overall better, you don't have the luxury of being able to just putz around for a season. You're sub 500 right now. You have a lot of good teams in the East. There's Milwaukee, there's Philadelphia, there's Miami, there's Boston, there's Cleveland. You can't putz around and mess around in some of these lower matchups. Like, you got to win those. If you want any shot at being a decent playoff team, you have to win those games.
Yep. It's just frustrating, and I don't see this turning around. You know, they're going to win their games. They're going to lose some stinkers, but I just don't see them coming together and putting together a 5, 6, 7 game win streak and turning this around at all. This team is going to be hovering around the bottom of the playoff race, and that's just that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see just that middling 500 like Jerry Reinsdorf loves so much.
Yeah, you know, like what is their standings right now? NBA standings. The Bulls are 12th.
Yeah, that ain't gonna cut it.
Not gonna cut it. They are 8-11. They've got to at least get to the 500 range to have a shot. You know, and the thing is that they're not bad enough to get one of those super high picks, but they're not good enough to make the playoffs and be competitive. But the last 2 wins they had were against the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the East.
Yeah, ironic.
Isn't it ironic? Don't you think? Yeah. So it's just frustrating, and you sit down to watch, and like, yeah, I give it like 10 minutes and see what Bulls team's going to play. If they're playing good, I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit down and watch this. And, you know, but then if you just start seeing that sloppy play, that Thunder game, I knew they were losing. I just knew.
Yeah.
You know, I keep an eye on it, but then I don't sit down and actively watch it. Where you want to go from here? Baseball or hockey?
I don't have much to say about the Blackhawks, but we are in the full tank at this point.
Oh,
if you were worried about them making the playoffs, don't.
Yeah. I mean, early on, we were like, oh my God, this team's terrible at tanking. This team is terrible at tanking. But guess what? They found out who they are. They're just into it. And
we knew that. I mean, you knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, that's called a correction. They are now 6 straight losses, losing 12 of their last 14. And, you know, and honestly, they're not playing like, they're not good, obviously, but they're not playing like, for the most part, awfully. They go out there, and I saw the term hardworking, hard for checking. And that's really what this team is. And you just want them to keep being that, because once you start infusing talent with the hard work effort, you're going to see results. And I think Mark Lazarus annoys me sometimes, but he was responding to somebody, and he's like, here's why it matters. If you get Connor Bedard or one of those top couple of draft picks, the elite guys coming out of this draft, you want them to be coming into an organization that has the framework of a winning team. Like, you know, the mindset, the work ethic, of a winning team, for them to step in and be their best. And I agree with that. And that's why it's important that they keep this up and keep working hard and keep trying to win, even when they're losing, because you want, when you start infusing talent, for that to be all right. Now look at the culture we're putting them in, this winning culture, the hardworking culture, and doing things the right way. That's important.
Yeah, I mean, Luke Richardson's play hard, fight hard, be physical. That's a good culture to establish. I think that we've talked about it in the past with other rebuilding teams, that part of rebuilding, even if you're not competing, is establishing a good culture. You know, we've talked about that in the past. It still applies now. It's still important now. And I think that there's going to be a better feeling in the organization with that kind of mentality than we had in the previous Bowman, Colleton, directionless, just hopeless rebuild. I think that you take these few years to establish that culture, and boy, if you got Connor Bedard, that rebuild is really, really accelerated. But it is important to establish that type of culture here, even when you're not winning games.
And the hope is, Kyle Davidson, you hope is that he's doing things right and making the right choices, and their decisions to keep guys in Rockford longer is the right one. And that they built the framework now that they own the Ice Hogs. Hopefully they put the framework in to be building those guys up to be successful in the NHL. This is all the hopes, and the path to becoming competitive again is a multi-season path. And I don't think Connor Bedard changes your strategy. It just accelerates the timeline, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
It probably knocks a year off of your timeline because of his elite talent level.
Yeah, it still hurts though, knowing just how far away they are from being anything.
Yeah, but you look and all right, so they played Dallas on Wednesday and they lost, but Dallas is one of the best teams in hockey. And, you were able to put up a good number of goals on them and stay with them for a while. Montreal, we thought they were going to be a terrible team, but they've actually been pretty darn good this season.
Oh, the Kirby Doc revenge game, you mean?
And it goes to a shootout, and Kirby Doc takes it home, and Patrick Kane is 0 for 8 in his last 8 shootout attempts.
Yeah, he doesn't have that razzle dazzle anymore.
You know what? Honestly, even in the heyday of the Blackhawks, he's never been great at the shootout. He gets too cute, I think. Always been too cute, trying to make that extra move. I always thought Taves was better because he went in fast and he just took that shot. But it's tough. Kane's got to score on those. But you lose that one, and so you're playing hard, you're competing, you're a much better team now that Seth Jones is back, which is a good thing. It's a good thing that a guy you signed for 4,000 years makes your team a better team.
Yeah,
they're not good. Nobody's pretending.
And they're not going to be good next year. Honestly, they could be worse next year.
They could.
If you lose Kane and Taze.
Yeah, you very well could. But it's one of those take a step back to take a step forward type things. It hurts taking the Band-Aid off, but sometimes you got to take that Band-Aid off.
Yeah. It sucks we had to be in this position, but that's what you got to do.
But I did a simulation. I did 10 simulations of the NHL draft, and the Blackhawks got the number 1 overall pick in 4 out of my 10.
All right. So 40%.
Yep. So They got four out of the 10 were first. 1, 2, 3. 3 of them were sixth overall, so they got worse. 2 were fifth overall, so stay right where they were, and 1 seventh, which 2 steps back. So I like the 4 firsts. Those make me happy.
Yeah, I mean that's the odds are getting a bit more promising, so that's good.
When Seth Jones came back from injury, Ian Mitchell got sent back down to Rockford. And I don't know if I saw that as a bad thing. It does seem that they are really trying to maximize people's time in the AHL.
Yeah.
And, as long as they've created that framework, and I don't know if they have or not, but I don't think they had that in the past. But if they've started to build that framework in the AHL where they don't care so much about winning as much as they do about getting guys ready for the NHL, then I'm okay with that, because hopefully Ian Mitchell is better in the long run for that. But you sort of need him to give you something, I think.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I don't want to say sending down is bad or that hope is lost with him, but I do feel like we're starting to get to that shit or get off the pot with Ian Mitchell.
I would agree. And I'm hoping that, I'm going to say this year, he's probably going to spend the majority of his time there. I think come training camp next year, it's that time to make a decision of whether you're going to shit or get off the pot. And we'll start to see whether these decisions to keep guys in Rockford were good ones or not.
Yeah, for sure. It's 7-2. They're losing, by the way, the Hawks.
Oh.
We're about to get owned by the Jets twice in one day.
Oof. I say all these good things and they're getting shellacked today. I got the football game on in the background.
Yeah, I have the football game on too, but I just checked the score update and yeah, it's 7-2.
Sam Lafferty injured. I don't know how long he's going to be out. But the question is, Stalock has a concussion. When he comes back, Soderblom has actually played probably better than Mrazek, but you probably send Soderblom down to the AHL, right?
Probably, though I kind of am on team see what Soderblom can give you.
I'm kind of on that team too. I don't know what the right decision is, though. I just don't know what that right decision is to do there. But I think that's the easiest decision to make, is just to send Soderblom down to the AHL.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's what could happen. Peter Mrazek's a veteran. He's been around a while. He just doesn't really serve much purpose on a team like this. He's just a stopgap, really.
He's a stopgap. I don't think he has any trade value. So it's not like, you can flip him and then ride Stalock and Soderblom. But I don't know. I mean, you don't want to cast off a veteran, because you never know when you're going to need that veteran. You can stash Soderblom. So I don't know what the right decision is. But it's going to be an interesting one, I think.
Yeah, we'll see.
Let's wrap this up with a little baseball talk.
Let's do it.
White Sox made a move today. They signed Mike Clevenger to a 1-year, $8 million contract. And honestly, the baseball community is pretty torn on this one. Whether it was a smart, in risk, like a low risk, high reward type move, or if the White Sox are idiots and Cleveland totally bailed on him at the right time.
Here's the way I see that. Taking a risk on a guy who started his career really, really well on the surface, no context, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because this could pay off really freaking well for the White Sox. And it also might not. Here's the problem. Is this going to be their big starting pitcher move?
I think they have to get another veteran.
I agree. But is it going to be a notable guy or not? Or is it going to be another? What was the guy they got from the Phillies last year? Don't even remember his name. But like, that was their starting pitcher move.
Yeah, I mean, the simplest one is they just re-signed Johnny Cueto. And then they go into this year with Giolito, Lance Lynn, Dylan Cease, Clevenger, and Cueto, and maybe Kopech when he's healthy. But that's probably the White Sox way of going about this. And I don't see them going after any of the top guys.
You're not going to go after Verlander. You're not going to go after DeGrom. You're not going to go after, I mean, I don't know who else is really big on. I don't think they're going after Senga. I don't think they're one of the. That's what I think the Cubs are going to be the team that's more likely to get Senga. But I mean, that's how I feel. Like Mike Clevenger just for the Sox makes me go eh. And if you had a more complete rotation and you were spending big on other free agents and you said, you know what, we have this stacked roster, we're going to add one more low risk, high reward. I think that's a really smart move. I just worry that that's going to be their starting pitching move. That's a lot riskier.
If this was Lance Lynn and Lucas Giolito from 2 years ago with Dylan Cease from last year and Kopech was healthy and you adding
still had Carlos Rodon.
No, even if you didn't have Rodon, but like, you know, Mike Clevenger was your 5 guy. You were like, hey, you know, he's better, you know, he is the upgrade over Vince Velasquez or.
Thank you. That's who I was trying to think of, as Vince Velasquez.
Oh, okay. You know, he's that upgrade and he's your 5 guy and he won't, you know, when we make the playoffs, he's not going to be pitching. You're like, okay, I can live with that, you know, sure. Because what if he stinks? All right, then you go with the Vince Velasquez's or, you know, Reynaldo Lopez's or whoever. And, you know, you chalk that up as an $8 million mistake. But if he comes back healthy and looks good, suddenly that elevates you. And you're like, okay, yeah. I'm good with that. But you're looking at a Lucas Giolito who didn't pitch particularly well last year.
No.
And a Lance Lynn who didn't pitch particularly well last year.
And is getting older.
Mm-hmm. And Dylan Cease looks great, but Michael Kopech is injured and your rotation needs at least 2 starters. At least. And you know, that in that case, man, you are hinging a whole lot of hope onto Mike Clevenger.
Yeah, and you know what? If they do end up making bigger moves at pitcher, whether it's a trade or whatever, then okay. You know, I'm not saying this is 100% going to be their big starting pitcher move. I'm saying that I think the first thing that comes to mind among a lot of people is that's going to be the case. It may or may not be true. And this could end up being, even if it is your big pitching move, there could be that rediscovering of the fountain of youth with Clevenger. He's had multiple Tommy Johns. He was really successful early on in his career. And I think, oh my goodness, Eagles, sorry. But I think that the problem that people are worried about is, are we going to have to rely on him being the solution? I think that is most of the worry.
Okay, so I'm going to throw out names and you tell me then how you feel about their rotation.
Okay.
If they, in addition to Clevenger and the guys they have, you add Noah Syndergaard.
Okay.
Taiwan Walker or a Taiwan Walker.
I mean, I think either of those are solid additions.
Jameson Taillon.
Good addition.
Drew Smiley.
He was really good for the Cubs last year. I wouldn't rely on him being any more than a 4, but I think you have something solid in there.
Jose Quintana.
He was pretty good last year. He was really good last year, actually, with the Pirates and the Cardinals.
Zach Davies.
Blah.
I mean, that's really where you're looking. I mean, and where does Johnny Cueto rate in as far as those other guys I've named?
Listen, I know Johnny Cueto was awesome last year, and I know a lot of people like him, but I am really weary about a 37, 38-year-old that doesn't miss a lot of bats anymore, repeating that performance.
Oh, I agree. It's one of those things is the devil you know better than the devil you don't know. And you've had most of a year with Johnny Cueto, so you know who he is, how he works with your staff and your catchers, and if you were to bring in another guy, like a Noah Syndergaard, how does he work with your front office and your pitching coach and the system you're trying to develop and your catchers, and even the way you want to pitch him in the order you want to pitch? Like how does all that work? How does he work with your nutritionist, and how is he working out? What is his attitude as a clubhouse guy? Those are the types of things that also go into it. And I would agree, putting stock in, your rapidly closing window of a playoff run on a guy that's going to be 37 this season. That's awfully tough. And it's a real dangerous move. But are any of those other guys so good that you go, we trust in that talent? This was 5 years ago, you'd be like, Noah Syndergaard, hell yeah. But the 2023 Noah Syndergaard, I don't know. It's this starting pitching market is not great, and I don't know how great the trade market is going to be for a starting pitcher. If you're the White Sox, do you roll the dice, sign Johnny Cueto, and then still try to add another arm?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned needing 2 arms, and I know you only have so many room on a roster, but I think if you bring in 2 more starting pitchers, I feel like if you do that, then you have at least a little more room for a safety net, so to speak. So if one of those guys doesn't work out like you do, you still have 2 other guys. It's just, who are you going to bring in?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the thing I look about as Cueto is he liked it there. He was happy, and he was probably added to it that the White Sox were a team that took a chance on him. Do you bring him in, and your safety net, your baseline is, all right, we're going to, if nothing else materializes, we've got Giolito, Lynn, Cease, Clevenger, Cueto, and Kopech at some point in the future. And that's and knowing that after that, you could still add a third arm, like another starting pitcher, and make, either anticipate injuries along the way or make somebody got a long reliever if necessary, or go to a 6-man rotation to start the season, and then make the plan that Kopech is going to come into the bullpen when he comes back. That's an option as well. That's probably the safe bet. And rather than let Cueto linger on the free agent market for longer and risk somebody taking him, because Johnny Cueto, whether or not you think he's going to be good, whether or not he is good, he is better and in that 5th starter spot than anybody you currently have on your roster.
Yeah, it's true.
So I think you have the room to absorb 3 starting pitchers in the free agent market or the trade market.
Yeah.
And you got one in Clevenger. I think you could absorb 2 more, whether it's Cueto and somebody else, or but you desperately needed at least 2. You could absorb a 3rd. So the White Sox, I'm hoping they make bigger moves in this, and this isn't just a cheap sign of things to come. But as a state of fact, whenever Jerry Reinsdorf goes out of his house, the birds go cheap, 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 cheap.
Oh, that's funny.
And on the other side, it is the never-ending game of every free agent that's worth their salt is linked to the Cubs.
Yeah, and after a while, you're tired of hearing rumors. Just, the winter meetings are coming up, and I want to see something happen. And even the week before the winter meetings here, it would be really nice if they could just make some sort of a move, just so we have something to talk about. But, a lot of those big moves happen at the winter meetings, and I don't expect any of the major free agents to sign until at least then. But there's plenty of guys out there that I think the Cubs can make a move on that I would like to see start to happen at some point.
Oh, absolutely. And, and to be honest with you, how many of those top short, the prizes are the 4 shortstops, correct?
Yes.
And I mean, I guess Judge, but I think
that's not happening to the Cubs.
That's not happening to the Cubs as far as what the Cubs are, because Judge seems like that is a lock to go to San Francisco at this point, right?
I mean, it's looking more and more likely by the day. I would definitely say that.
But who is Carlos Correa's agent?
Scott Boras.
Who is Xander Bogaerts' agent?
Is it Scott Boras?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
And let's see. And who's Trey Turner's agent? Trey Turner's agent doesn't seem that it is Scott Boras. So with 2 of the 4 top shortstops being Boras agents, you don't anticipate them signing early.
No, you don't.
He is going to squeeze every last dollar that he can out, because that's what he does. So that's the sucky part, is that makes it harder for the Cubs. If you could just be like, hey, bang, bang, we signed Carlos Correa or whatever. And then the rest of your free agency falls into place. If you don't, you can't start going after your plan B right off the bat. You always anticipate signing your top guys. So I don't know how the Cubs plan to attack this free agency period, because when the guys you're looking to sign are Boris guys, and that's your top targets, do you make the move that you're gonna pony up and win that bidding war, or do you start putting together a team and hope for the best and plan for the worst with those guys if you don't get them? I don't know what Jed's going to do, and it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out.
I mean, I just hope they're truly aggressive here and that they're not willing to maybe flex a few things instead of being like, this is our demands. Nope, not ours. Sorry. Like, I really want them to be aggressive, because you know what? This is going to be a very competitive market for a lot of these guys. You're competing with a lot of big teams to get some of these guys.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the current crop of names that are linked to the Cubs are two guys that I mentioned with the White Sox, Jameson Taillon and Taijuan Walker. And it's not the first that I've heard those names be tossed around. And
yeah, I've heard Taijuan Walker tossed around quite a bit.
And when I was putting together my my mock Cubs signing, I had Taijuan Walker in as an additional arm, because I don't think you can have enough starting pitchers in your system. And I think he's one that ends up being a guy you don't have to rely on a ton, but becomes very helpful. And the other two are Cody Bellinger, who we've heard linked quite a bit, and Michael Conforto.
I'd rather stay away from Conforto.
Thank you. I saw some mixed reviews, and I don't know if I see the benefit in signing a Michael Conforto.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like the fit isn't there. And you're taking a risk for a guy that hasn't played very much at all. He didn't play at all last year.
No, and the thing is apparently he's looking for a 2-year deal with a opt-out after the first year. Like, what incentive do the Cubs have to sign a guy to a 2-year deal with a player opt-out? Because if he's awesome, you lose out on him. And if he stinks, you're stuck with him. Like, that just seems like a bad deal for the Cubs. I just don't see the benefit of Conforto. Is he missed all of last year. I don't think he comes out and is a hot commodity there. I stay away.
Yeah, because the idea of Bellinger is like a potential stopgap, low risk, high reward, because your long-term solution in center field more than likely is probably going to be PCA at this point. Yeah. And you feel like even if you don't get much from Bellinger, if you were to sign him, if you don't get much from him, you're not committing a lot of money. And even if you're committing a decent chunk of change for a 1-year deal, a hypothetical 1-year deal in 2023, if you're looking at a 1-year deal, it's like, okay, it's 1 year. Then after that, that's it.
The thing is, Cody Bellinger, number one, I think his floor is higher than Michael Conforto's. And his ceiling is infinitely higher than Michael Conforto. Cody Bellinger at one point was a superstar.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're going to see that again. I do feel like when you're looking at the risks, I mean, in addition to what I just said with the money and everything, if you look at what Bellinger did last year, a lot of things were pretty ugly, no doubt. He did at least hit 19 home runs. And if you were to get like a 20 homer season from Bellinger from the left side, I feel like you would take that as a win. And with Conforto, the uncertainty there is because he didn't play for an entire year, and you never know how you're going to come out. He could come out great. He could come out terribly. It's just, what is he going to want? What would you be willing to? It's just something that I think is not in the Cubs' interest.
Yeah. And like I said, Cody Bellinger has a higher ceiling. I don't know what either player, how close they come to their ceiling. I agree with you that Cody Bellinger is not going to have that season where he has a 7.7 WAR. But he had hit that point not too long ago. So he's 26 years old and already has a 7.7 WAR season under his belt in the MLB. So I take that risk, even if you're paying him a good chunk of money for that 1 year. I think he's the much better addition than Michael Conforto. I don't see the value with him.
I wonder if Bellinger is going to be one of those sign soon guys.
I think so. I think some of those, because we saw the last 2 seasons. I mean, COVID definitely was its toll on it, but the mid-level and lower level free agents lasted a long time. I think we're going to see them signed earlier, partly because they're more motivated to get that deal under their belt rather than wait until, April, May to sign. I think they're going to be more motivated, and I think teams are going to be more willing to spend. And so I think it's going to be a match where you're going to see those players sign early. So I think you're going to see a Bellinger sign fairly early. I think you're going to see a Jose Abreu sign fairly early. Some of those pitchers that are not going to command long-term deals, starting pitchers, I think you'll see them sign fairly early.
Yeah, I think so too.
That would be nice to see. The Cubs start adding some more talent early on and be prepared for, hey, if the season starts and we can't add one of those top 4 shortstops, then we're ready to go. We'll be better than last year, but we still won't be totally, all in, but we'll still be competitive. I think that's an okay spot to be in.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I'm just hoping we see something, because the last couple seasons of the Cold Stove League was really, really a tough time for fans.
It was, and I think people are already getting antsy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think the winter meetings are next week. Is it next week or the week after?
It's first week in December, I think. So it's coming up pretty quickly.
Yeah. So we're pretty close. So I think fans are, once those winter meetings happen, if we don't start seeing some signings, I think fans are going to lose their minds. And honestly, I think Aaron Judge signs real quick.
Boy, wouldn't that be something?
I think he knows kind of what he wants, and he knows the money that he wants. I think he's going to take a deal and just be done with it. And hopefully that big domino falling just causes everything to just.
Yeah, I mean that would at least provide a lot of news, which I think we're dying for, and I think it could set the market too a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think I've said my piece.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or ShineFabPat2 on Twitter for as long as Twitter is still around. AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like... Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears! Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.